Nah, but for real, that did. Fam, you man didn't even put in work.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast.
About 4 years ago, I started a running list on my Letterboxd of my top 10 films of the decade. As the decade draws to a close, I wanted to talk about those films and why I like them so much, spotlight some other films, and encourage people to check them all out. This is not a ranked list or a one movie per year list. It's just 10 films I really liked plus some others. Films that impacted me personally and that I thought were really special. I really liked Fury Road and all the John Wick films, but this list is more about what was special to me and what impacted me and what might impact you if you watched it, versus just something I enjoyed and thought was well made. This also isn't some objective list of the best movies of the decade. I've never been interested in ranking or stringent objectivity, and if there's something you think is more deserving or that's missing, feel free to mention suggestions of films for me or other people looking at the comments section to watch. But if you think you have a superior list, or that mine is bad, or that liking movies is a competition, I don't care. Make your own video and leave me alone. If you told me you had a huge budget ready, and that it was my responsibility to choose one established director out of anyone in the world to use it, other than myself or anyone that I know personally, I would choose Shane Carruth. He makes such beautiful, weird, experimental art with so little money, and it's so frustrating to me that his projects keep falling through due to lack of budget. Upstream Color was shot on DSLRs and self-distributed by Carruth, and both that film and his other film Primer are, to me, must-see movies for film fans and filmmakers. Part of my exhaustion with franchise superhero films is that with Endgame's budget, you could make 25 Autopiaries, 7,120 upstream colors, assuming the estimated budget online is accurate, and 50,857 primers. I'm not even going to touch on Upstream Color's plot. It's weird and abstract, and I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't even remember all of the specifics, but I definitely remember how this movie made me feel when I watched it, and how much it inspired me afterward to want to go forth and make weird art. One of the first video essays I ever made was about how Hot Fuzz got me into film and filmmaking, and my actual first video essay on this channel briefly references Tony Zhou's own incredible essay on Edgar Wright and visual comedy. And The World's End is the closer on the trilogy that Hot Fuzz started. Scott Pilgrim was a big letdown for me, and I don't feel much one way or another about Baby Driver, but The World's End was anything but a disappointment. I think it's my favorite in the Cornetto trilogy now. Even though Hot Fuzz has a more dense script with more expertly woven allusions, The World's End brings weightier emotional themes, addiction, self-loathing, abuse, and self-harm, and incorporates them into an excellent sci-fi action comedy film about lost youth and nostalgia. And drinking. It's a movie about drinking. Refn seems to have lost some of his favor with critics in the past few years, but I haven't really kept up with his work. The only other movie of his I've seen in full was Valhalla Rising, which predates Drive, so I don't have much to say about him now or how people look at him now, because I haven't seen Neon Demon or Only God Forgives. I just haven't gotten around to it. But I saw Drive 3 times in theaters. At least when it came out, Drive felt huge. Like Refn said, the pretty in pink with a head smash, with a standout score and alternating from tender contemplative scenes into brutal violence. And I loved it, and still appreciate how special it felt and how compelled I felt to watch it over and over with an audience. One time I was talking about The Lobster with some of my relatives who hadn't seen it, and my mom said it sounded really depressing. And then I was like, well, I love it. And my mom's immediate response was, you would. I don't think that was insulting at all. I thought it was really funny and illustrative of my relationship with film and the films that I like versus what a normal human being might like. The Lobster explores some of my favorite thematic territory, interstitiality and the violation of restrictive social norms, and has pitch black and hysterical subversions of heteronormativity and rape culture. It's brutal and beautiful and very funny. The Favorite is also a fantastic film, but The Lobster is it for me. It's awesome. It's so good. My Hereditary review is, to me, the best review I've ever done, and probably the best I'll do for a while, so I do recommend checking that out. In short, It's the scariest film I've ever seen, and the first and only film that I, from my own traumatic experiences with death, felt accurately portrayed familial loss and grief. It's one of the best films I've ever seen, and I never want to see it again. The Act of Killing is about the men who committed genocide in Indonesia in the 1960s, about how they're seen as heroes, about their love and emulation of violent American films, about a human being's capacity for violence, and that capacity being enabled by the forced national delusion of him being a hero. I don't have a favorite movie of the decade, but this is easily the most important movie I saw all decade, both in its content and in how it makes you feel. It will make your soul feel sick, but also in how far it advances the medium of film and expands what a film can do. I've spent a lot of time involved in creative communities, both online and later in life, real life. And there are certain people you'll run into in those communities who are talented, but who are cruel and self-centered, and who will squander every ounce of goodwill and kindness they get. And especially since I was around college age and very involved with these communities and dealing with these kinds of people when it came out, I really enjoyed Inside Llewyn Davis as a portrayal of that personality, even if I don't know anything, really, about the folk music historical context of the film. The Please Mr. Kennedy sequence is also my favorite editing of any sequence of the decade. This cut in particular is really funny. Snowpiercer is wild, it's hysterical, it's brutal, it's a meticulously constructed anti-capitalist allegory set on some kind of sci-fi fantasy train, and every moment has so much life and so much originality and creativity. I love most of Bong Joon-ho's other films that I've seen, including Parasite, which just came out, but this one is my favorite. And Attack the Block is another sci-fi social commentary film, though it's more of a sci-fi horror film that confronts racism along with classism, about aliens attacking inner-city London. The monster design is iconic and pulled off really well. The visual style is striking and has maybe my favorite shot of the decade, and it's one of those joy of film and filmmaking type movies. Like Hereditary, I already have a full review up for Resolution. It, Spring, and The Endless are all incredible movies, and Benson and Moorhead are two of my favorite working filmmakers. And Resolution and The Endless especially are absolute must-see films for horror fans. Like, if you want to see people making films with relatively low budgets that are accessible, it would be a lot easier to get someone who hasn't seen a lot of avant-garde or experimental or art film into Resolution than it would be something like The Lobster or Upstream Color, but are still so idiosyncratic and dark and that play so expertly with genre tropes and truly build their own world with their own vision. Then please check them out. So, those are the Letterboxd 10. As far as other films, Exit Through the Gift Shop was on my list for a long time. It's about rich people and artists and the question of authenticity and art, and it's subversive and wryly funny, and I think it was the first documentary film I ever connected with and felt inspired by. Just a couple of years ago, I got into the work of Adam Curtis, and I love both Hypernormalization and Bitter Lake. I definitely aspire to, one day be able to weave documentaries as upsetting and compelling and confrontational as Curtis. There's certainly no one else like him. And of course, there's no one like Herzog either. Into the Abyss is great, and for a phone company-sponsored mini-documentary, so is From One Second to the Next. Horror Noir, which I reviewed and which is available on Shudder, is my favorite film documentary I saw all decade. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is one of my favorite movies, period, and is a very sweet and endearing and gory meta-slasher film about classism. I think both Tucker and Dale and Resolution are tragically underappreciated as far as meta-horror goes. I also reviewed Krampus a couple of years ago. It is a fantastic anti-capitalist family horror movie in the vein of Gremlins, and it has my favorite opening shot of the decade.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look in the 5 and 10, glistening once again, with candy canes and silver lanes aglow.
Troll Hunter is my favorite found footage film of the decade and ever. It's a Norwegian dark comedy found footage horror film.
Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?
And Green Room is a vicious thriller about a punk band trying to escape Nazis trying to kill them. Blue Ruin, by the same director, is great as well. The Babadook was originally on my list and got replaced by Hereditary. I just felt like Hereditary accomplishes similar goals, but in a more upsetting way, though Babadook's portrayal of mental illness through allegory works super well. The Witch is so great and so terrifying, and A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, a touching and also just really cool Iranian vampire western film, rules. What we do in the shadows is just really charming and funny. I liked it the first time I saw it, but the second time I saw it, I thought it was hysterical and I loved it. And while it doesn't have the referential or narrative or emotional depth of a lot of other mixed genre horror films, it is really endearing and very, very funny and is accessible to pretty much anyone. I could see it being a gateway film for someone who doesn't go out of their way to watch anything but big release movies to get more into weird, independent comedy films. I don't like quoting movies in conversation, but I do think the "Your Boschetti is worms" scene is hysterical, and I think of it basically every time I eat spaghetti.
So this is my favorite trick. We present our guest with a plate of Boschetti. And then I will say, why don't you eat some Boschetti? Please, Nick, eat some Boschetti. I didn't realize you enjoyed eating worms, Nick.
No.
They are worms.
There's worms wiggling around in my plate.
It's worm-like, but not actually worm.
We stole that idea from the Lost Boys.
I was never really into giant robot anime. G Gundam was the only one I ever really watched. But especially as a big Charlie Day fan, Pacific Rim was a movie that captured my imagination for a while. I liked it and The World's End, and their look and feel enough to cosplay as characters from both of them. And I don't listen to or watch a ton of stand-up albums anymore, so I definitely am not an expert on the current landscape. But I still really love stand-up comedy as an art form, and I have a ton of respect for comics and for what they do. And if you've watched my Fake Friends series, you know I'm a big fan of Bo Burnham's comedy special, Make Happy. It's really the only special that I've rewatched a ton recently, or that I'll just put on background noise, and the only one from the past few years that I feel is worth mentioning, as, like I've said before, an excellent example of empathetic satire. And, last but not least, there's Pee-wee's Big Holiday. I actually got to contribute to a queer writers and queer films piece for Paste magazine, and this is the movie I chose to write about for it. It's silly and sweet and is a whimsical and bizarre and playful queer romance, and probably the best way to have followed up something like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. There's no effort to replicate the scope or cultural impact of that film. Holiday exists on its own terms, and it's its own weird adventure. A whole lot of that adventure centering on a crush between two men.
Cool. Double cool. Triple cool.
So, there you go. On top of the tweaking the top 10 Letterboxd list for years, I've been working on the full list for a little while and thought about it a lot, and I'm pretty happy with it. I wish I had more films that weren't in English to pull from, and more films from directors of color, and that's something I'll definitely keep in mind in the future to try to be better about, especially if I start doing these lists yearly or something like that. Though honestly, lately I spend more time playing tabletop games than watching films, and I'm probably more invested in tabletop and video games than film, so I haven't been watching that many films anyway. And generally, I don't know if anyone was surprised that the list was mostly dark, funny, weird, subversive movies that embrace genre, along with some heavy, really heavy, like, intellectual documentaries. That's the stuff that I talk about all the time anyway. I would love to do a video essay on Adam Curtis one day, but he's a filmmaker who, frankly, is kind of intimidating for me to watch or listen to and try to fully understand, let alone try to analyze in a video. So, we'll see. And like I said, feel free to recommend other films in the comments. I hope that the list presented here has some suggestions y'all might not have heard of or been interested in and now want to check out. My work does not compare to theirs, but I take a lot of inspiration in my video essay work from Herzog and Curtis's documentaries, and Oppenheimer's The Act of Killing was just so incredible and devastating, and it feels weird to call a movie brave, but if there was a brave movie to have made, that would have been it. So if you like something like Fake Friends 2 or other YouTube video essays, and you don't watch a lot of traditional documentaries, especially by those sorts of directors, you really should. Speaking of Fake Friends 2, it got taken down due to a copyright strike from UMG. I'm currently fighting it as best as I can. It's a very frustrating and complicated process, and I want to do it right. I don't want to just re-upload it edited. I know that this was a fair use case, and I'm going to keep pushing it, and we're going to see what happens. But please be patient. I am very flattered that people want it back up and keep messaging me every single day about it. Like, I'm happy that there's interest, but I also want it back up and I'm doing everything that I can. Don't think that I just like deleted it or that I don't care that it's not up. I promise, it's a stupid, drawn out, needlessly complicated process. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon, and thank you for watching. And happy 2020! Check out Struggle Session and Critical Bits. I'll be working on those a lot, along with video essays and everything else in the coming year. Thanks!